So good afternoon. My name is Nathan Tosh. I am the program coordinator at the Women's Center and LGBTQIA Safe Zone Hub. And today, as part of the United Wounds of America, a dialogue on healing, we are going to be presenting a talk about disorientation guides, which are student-led guides for campus change. Before we start, again, this is just part of the United Wounds of America, a dialogue of healing series. It's a collaboration between the Women's Center, the LGBTQIA Safe Zone Hub, and Project Dive. The Women's Center and the Safe Zone Hub are also offering a related creative expressions support group, which will meet on Tuesdays from 1:15 to 2:15 p.m. And the contents of this presentation will be recorded and be available for further viewing at a later date. Before we get started, I was sort of wondering the idea, since this is a presentation that is sort of about college protest in a sense. Have we sort of heard of this sort of rumor that college radicalizes students? And if so, where do you think that sort of rumor comes from? Feel free to unmute yourself and speak to that if you have any ideas.
I don't think I've heard that college radicalizes students. I don't think that's something that.
Or even just like pushes them farther, like to be more liberal, or pushes them farther left.
I feel like maybe like in the 60s, maybe there was kind of an energy towards that, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think the sort of idea that I was pushing towards is that we sort of have like this idea that college maybe radicalizes students based off of the 1960s protests. We have a bunch of our parents and like our older generations who have gone to college, been part of like a number of different movements, including the civil rights movement, the student movement, the women's rights movements, the gay rights movement, all within a period of a decade. And I think that sort of transformed our idea of what college does to students. And I think it's kind of interesting because like even from like sort of right-wing ideology, we sort of hear that like college is like pushing people towards the left, even though there's no like any indicator of like changes in voting trends or anything like that that sort of point it to being like an accurate statement. I wish I could sort of cover more about college protesting before, just to give like more framework, but I'd rather sort of point to Roger K. Ferguson's book, We Demand, the University and Student Protest. Written in 2017, it covers pretty much all post-World War II college protests, and it also highlights sort of this movement towards anti-intellectualism that we're sort of seeing surging up in the United States right now. So I think it's like a pretty poignant book to dig into. It's a pretty short 100 pages, and to get like a further dig into like the history of college protest, I think it's a great resource. But on the topic of what we're talking about today, we're going to be discussing disorientation guides. Here's an example from Wesleyan University. This is their 2015 to 2016 cover. So what are disorientation guides? They're a play on college student orientation guides. They're student-led and organized, and they highlight the good and bad at an institution and continue to push new students to advocate for more ethical practices on their college campuses. I'm going to briefly show you two different college covers that you can find on different orientation guides to sort of see the ideas of like just what they're putting on the front cover to sort of see what they're doing. The first one is the 2020 Disorientation Guide for Stanford University. The image looks like pretty standard until you start looking a little closer. You have like the dis in front of the orientation. The welcome to Stanford is backwards and upside down. And then you also have something like this one from the University of Chicago, which is a play off the new Animal Crossing game. So you can see that it's quite poignant within its own time frame. It's referencing something within pop culture right now. And this is sort of the way that they're presenting themselves. We're going to do like a quick little deep dive, highlight a few pages within a few disorientation guides, since we only have a pretty limited amount of time during this presentation. One of the ones that we're going to look through is the Stanford guide. We're also going to be looking through an NYU guide as well as a CUNY guide. So again, this is the Stanford guide for 2020. If we look at the first page, we can see this opening that they're sharing with us. Welcome to Stanford University, home of the palm trees and the red tile roofs, bright students and world-renowned professors, resources and opportunities you can only dream about. Welcome to Stanford, whose beautiful veneer hides a dark and violent history, whose resources and opportunities are only available because of its long history of dispossession, displacement, and death, who treats the members of its community with respect and dignity only if they derive immense profit from them. These two realities may be hard to merge together, but as students and as members of the community who benefit a lot from the results of Stanford's exploitation, we have an obligation to see what Stanford really stands for and make sure it doesn't stay that way. So you can see that this is quite a harsh picking at Stanford University, but it starts off like how you would sort of expect like a college orientation guide to go. As we move through, I'm just going to show examples throughout this guide. The second page, we have a map of the campus. And rather than sort of highlighting like, oh, here's this building, the Women's Center is in this building, you can see that all of these buildings are sort of marked off with different events. So like you have the president's office and then underneath it, takeover of '89. You have this ethnic themed dorms that they're highlighting. You have the White Plaza and Brown Plaza where they have different campaigns that have happened as well. As we continue through, there's a further history that the students have outlined throughout the history of the college. You can take a closer look at this after the presentation, but it highlights a number of movements that have happened on campus. There's also this section on Stanford and colonialism and about how Stanford came to be, what native lands is taking over, as well as the history of their previous mascots, militarism and war. There's some history about like their sort of queer student resources. And if you read this sort of page here, the students sort of highlighting how great their queer resource center is, but they're also sort of marking how problematic it was before it became to be what it's known today. They talk about how there was barely any people of color on the staff, how they were so anti-political that they would not even share or hang a pride flag in the space. And while the space is now usable for students and has like a great number of resources for incoming freshmen, it wasn't always that way, and that students need to be aware of its previous past so it doesn't repeat itself. We have information about the Hoover Institute and it talks about its relation to eugenics. It also provides warnings. If you read the Stanford College Republicans, they are warning students that that this group often places flyers up, and they're pretty easy to take down, but the people will often stake out flyers and record students who take them down and then share them on social media so that they receive an additional harassment, which is sort of mind-boggling. There's ideas about how to make the most out of your money while you're at Stanford, basic things for police abolition, accessibility. There's a privilege 101, Black feminism 101, which all these provide like great resources for students, ideas on how to protest, direct action, divest programs that they have. They have all the information for gender inclusive programming and how to make sure that you get your name changed, get into different programs that meet your gender identity, acknowledges all the teachers. I really like this page. There's a cool courses, professors, and programs. So you can see that they highlight different professors, different programs, different courses that are really allies for students who are generally marginalized and will help support them. And it just continues on what to do. Here's some book recommendations as well as this sort of funny heterosexuality questionnaire. And that's sort of like what's contained within this journal. I'm going to quickly run through NYU's next. This is NYU's from 2017. And again, it's pretty similar to what Stanford does, it's a bit shorter, and it has less of the sort of dynamic mapping of the college institution. But some pages that I wanted to pay attention to are this thing. We have this displacement in corporate education, and it sort of goes over all of their boards of trustees and where sort of a lot of the money is going and where the university makes money, including why there's such an advocacy for divest opportunities within these documents. It also highlights their campus on Adu Dubai and talks about its creation and sort of the mistreatment of all the workers that helped build it. And it's highlighting that history that NYU would probably rather sort of erase. Here we also have gentrification, and it highlights how NYU directly plays into gentrification of the Greenwich Village and what you can sort of do to combat it. It also marks the increased police presence because now that there's a college campus in the area, there's a higher police presence in order to try to keep the neighborhood, quote unquote, safe. And I think this one compared to Stanford, we have this sanctuary campus now, which highlights all of the sanctuary needs on campus and what the university is doing and what to protect you and what they're no longer doing. More diverse stuff, as well as a bunch of clubs and different organizations that are part of NYU that you can get involved in. There's this sort of great guide to being trans and gender nonconforming at NYU that highlights everywhere that you need to go, including a step-by-step information about how to change your name, which I think is sort of like a wonderful addition. And moving on to this one from CUNY. This one is specifically for Brooklyn College rather than covering a giant CUNY organization. This one is primarily focused on money. So we have the history of CUNY and how it was originally a free academy. They were taking issue with the way that adjunct professors are being treated on campus and how they want money to be funneled into adjuncts so that they can teach properly without having to worry about living in poverty, and also highlight about how higher officials are making larger sums of money while adjunct professors are still struggling and that their buildings are in disrepair. It tells you more about the campus police and issues that they have with them. There's plenty of information about their Free Palestine movement on campus. And same thing as NYU, they have a sort of sanctuary initiative, and they highlight many of the student resources on campus, such as the Brooklyn College Student Union, Puerto Rican Alliance, the socialist movement on campus, that allow students to become a part of their own institutions and break the sort of causes or a sort of cycle that they're seeing where faculty, staff, and students feel mistreated. They don't feel like they're adequately given like equal treatment. So to sort of end off of this topic, I'm hoping to sort of raise a question of what would we want to see in our own disorientation guides? What are ideas that make it important that we should share with students? Like something that like really touches me is the sort of ideas of them sharing the transgender information that allows students to get proper care. What would we like to highlight within our own disorientation guides? And what do you find useful, or what do you have questions about in these?